Well,
No,
yeah, yeah.
no, crowds.
So
Yeah, the only fireworks we lit off were sparklers, and I think they were called snakes.
yeah,
Yeah, that was it.
yeah,
That was the extent of it in the driveway.
yeah,
Woo.
yeah, yeah. We did sparklers. My best friend grew up as a girl, and her dad would get he worked for a large waterproofing company out of Detroit. And they had a bunch of commercial buildings down in Detroit, and he would and they would go down like close to Ohio. And Ohio was kind of like Wisconsin, right? So you could get pretty much anything and everything. And
Yeah.
so he would go down there and like I was over there one time and like again, I think back upon it now and I'm like, what do we people what are we I don't understand what you guys were doing. They had like set up Roman candles or fireworks that shot and all of a sudden they fell over. So now you got fireworks going all over the yard, like, and everybody's ducking and covering, and like, yeah, and like, I was like not 8 or 9, and so my dad hunted when I was a kid, and then he later on wound up becoming a hunter safety instructor, and so I had very very firm rules around anything that shot out of anything other than a water gun, right? Like we treated the BB gun. I have my BB gun that I had when I was a kid. We treated the BB gun like it was an actual gun. Like, there was no shenanigans or messing around. And like, as a kid, I remember like all of a sudden, all those Roman candles like falling over, the mortars falling over, and I'm going, yeah, I think it's time for me to go home. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And I'm like 8 or 9, maybe 10 at the oldest. So, but anyways, so today we are going to not discuss fireworks because Fourth of July is over, and we are going to discuss foot and ankle. And in my less than humble opinion, I have lots of opinions that aren't humble, but in my less than humble opinion, this is probably one of the most misunderstood parts of the body, and for a variety of reasons. Um, Largely, people don't they don't when they name things or label things. So, like for those of you who are watching, when you go to the running shoe store and they tell me that you're over pronating, right? Um, they're not using the term right, and I hate to be like language police, but when you're trying to talk about something that it could be important, um, you got to use the right terminology. And because then what winds up happening is that there's a whole misunderstanding around everything else in the conversation. So, um, and also the biggest opportunity that we have for our feet to feel good and for our ankles to feel good is to strengthen them. And most people don't do that very often. Calves are looked at as like kind of like a byproduct, right? Um, and so I think there's a lot of, and as we get older, everybody loses they lose their balance. Well, that's because your feet and ankles are weak. Like I've got really good balance, and it's not because, like when I came down the assembly line and was getting creative in my mom's belly, you know, there wasn't a balance fairy that flew over top and sprinkled balance fairy dust over the top of me. It's because particularly over the last 5 years, um, I've worked on strengthening my feet, my ankles, and by proxy, then my feet got stronger as well. Um, these are also things that I wish I would have understood when I was younger in my career, because I could have done a lot more things with the athletes that I worked with, especially like the soccer kids that I worked with. Man, oh man, Like, well, again, if I could hop in the Wayback Machine and go back 20 years, man, oh man, like we could have done some really, really cool stuff. So, so, and I don't want to like get out into the weeds and over technical into the foot because you can, right? Um, so I think what we're going to do is we're just going to we'll throw out some general terms that people may or may not hear or have heard. Also ways that I remember some of this stuff because like a lot of this stuff, my brain does not like. I said this last week. I think it wasn't until I took anatomy and motion and I had context around the movements that they became solidified in my head in ways that I would understand it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So um, it's funny now too. So I took anatomy and motion in 2017, and anatomy and motion popped in like the NKT community. I want to say around 2014, and when I took it, it was full 6-day immersion. There was no other way to do it. So now Gary does like he does like there's smaller workshops, and some of them he does them online as well, and then some of them are in person. And I don't think there's a 6-day immersion anymore, which was like bananas for your brain. Like, well, oh my god, my brain hurt so bad after that 6 days because it was all 8 hours. It was 48 hours legit. There was no, yeah, we went to lunch and we had a couple of breaks, but like they were just pouring information into our brains. So I think that when we start to talk about, so anyways, now it's funny because I see lots of people, lots of very famous influencers that have taken anatomy and motion or have taken Gary's ideas and work and have made it into their own. And I don't see them giving Gary a lot of credit, which really pisses me off. In the martial arts world, uh, especially in the time that I came up in, and earlier than that as well. If you didn't give credit to where you got your stuff from, there might be a reckoning to pay, right? And so it frustrates me that people don't give more credit to Gary. But the thing that we want to think about with the foot and as it sits on the ground is we want to think about 3 points of contact. So we want to think about under the heel here, the knuckle of the pinky toe and the knuckle of the big toe. And that creates this tripod, right? And it goes in heel strike. So you hit the foot and then you touch your pinky toe and then the big toe comes down. And if those three things happen, then we can start to clearly define terms. So when someone talks about pronation, they're speaking of it in a term that isn't correct most of the time because they aren't here. Let me put this on the purple hat too, because it's blending in too well with the floor. So they're not using it in terms that actually anatomically jive. So because they're talking about this, I would never want to see this in the foot, right? So I would never want to see someone's foot go from here to here, okay? Just like I would never want to see someone's foot go from here to here, right? So big toe, I'm sorry, heel, pinky toe, big toe, but never actually coming onto the ball of the foot or that big toe knuckle. So now there's a couple things again that if I could get in the Wayback Machine, if I could talk to Mr. Peabody or Doc Brown and hop in the Wayback Machine and go sit some people down, one of the things that I would sit them down in is, why is this eversion and this inversion,
Yeah, I know.
right? So,
Yep.
we've talked about the planes of motion thing. Why is this photoplane and this sagittal plane, right? Like, I don't understand, but I don't have that capability yet. But when I do, I promise you, I will go find them and we'll straighten this whole thing out. So, now, so these are the movements of the ankle when we only have 2 points of contact. And they are harmful to the ankle when we only have 2 points of contact. But when the foot comes down and we have all 3 points of contact, then, and the knee travels towards the midline and that arch drops flat and we maintain 3 points of contact, that is pronation. So when you go to the running shoe store or your best friend with Hoka's that ran in 5th grade and watched a YouTube video starts to talk about overpronation, there's no such thing as overpronation, just like there's no such thing as oversupination, right? It's eversion or inversion. And the only way I can remember it was I worked with a ton of soccer players and they all wound up with inversion sprains. So that's the only way I can remember. Okay, so so those are some, and we want the foot to pronate, just like we want the foot to supinate. So supinate is when that arch lifts. It typically happens as the thigh and the shin rotates. The arch will lift up, will stay rotated out towards the pinky toe, and pronation happens when it goes in towards the big toe. And so that will change the shape of the foot. This is a shock absorption, and this is typically getting you ready for balance and starting in early and late swing before you push off and go to heel strength. Now, we'll stay there because there's no need for the rest of it. Okay, let's actually talk about now things that matter to people outside of my insistence on trying to correct the world on these things. So let's talk about balance. Balance is a skill that people try to teach on unstable objects.
When in life are you on an unstable object?
that aren't scalable. Okay? So people like now, it's less today than it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And look, I'm not saying that you don't play around with things and have fun and do things, right? But it doesn't do the things they think it does. So standing on the Bosu ball or standing on a wobble board is a scalable thing, or it's an unscalable thing. And it's a skill that you can learn, right? And I'm not saying that it's not a good thing to kind of learn to figure out where your center of mass is and how to correct it and how to feel back and forth where things are going, right? There's a benefit to it. But outside of learning the parlor trick, it's not really scalable after that. And you're also not going to get any adaptation to the tissues. In the beginning, you're going to get minimal adaptation, but that's like taking someone that hasn't moved and taking them off the couch and taking them out for a walk, right? I was listening to something the other day that I thought was really, really well done. they were talking about, losing weight, getting into shape, and all these things, and how we've we've minimized the need for strength training because everybody in the last, let's say, 10 years has talked about the how beneficial walking is, and it is, by the way. I'm not saying that it's not, but there's no adaptation to the body that is to be had unless you live on the side of the mountain. Once you become in the condition that you can walk for 30 minutes, yeah, the if you walk high enough, that zone 2 cardio is good for your heart. It's good for circulation, but it's not making you any stronger. And that's from someone who goes and walks 3 to 4 times a week with his wife with a 25-pound pack. Now, I do it because I want that zone 2 cardio, but I'm not thinking that it's going to make my calves and my legs bigger and stronger because it's not stimulating enough once you get past a certain fitness level. So when you're on the wobble board or you're on the Bosu ball and people are trying to make you squat and do all these things, it's not scalable. It's hard to add load to that safely. So what I found to be far more beneficial is just strengthening your damn ankle, right? And so, we've talked about this before in the past with starting out with tib raises, right? And going to the wall and just picking up your feet. And then you can also put your head over your feet and make it more difficult. Now, I already know what you're going to say. Well, Sean, how is that scalable? It's not once you get to a certain point. Yes, if you want to do tib raises until Christmas, be my guest. But I'm also pragmatic, and I will tell you that that's not the most efficient use of your time. So we have to load it, and one of the ways that you can load it now, obviously they have like tib bars that you can do tib raises on, and the tib is short for tibialis anterior, which is this muscle that runs from the top of your shin, the top of your shin down into your foot. So, but it is responsible for a lot of deceleration as the knee starts to come over the toe, as we're going downstairs, things like that. It loads to give stability and provide stability. So one of the ways that you can load it is you can buy, obviously, like I said, they have tib bars, or you can get a kettlebell. You can do this with a dumbbell as well, but the kettlebell just seems to work really well. And if you know people who really love kettlebells, you can tell them that this is the best use of the kettlebell that they'll ever see. And it'll make them very happy, by the way. Tell them that this is the greatest Russian ankle training device in the history known to man. And they will be very happy with you.
Mm-hmm.
They may or may not fight you, right?
Yeah.
So, now, 2007 Sean would think this was hypocrisy, right? Because 2007 Sean was eyeballs deep into kettlebell war, right? So, stick the bell on your foot, and then you can start to get into like long range motions, right? You can start to do circles, and then the other way, right? And this will do far more to help you strengthen your ankle than all of the other things that we have previously discussed and talked poorly about before. Then a couple ways that you can make your feet stronger, also your ankles, are doing calf raises. Because, and here's where you start to get better balance, because you start to become strong on one foot, right? And so, and then, you can progress that up to loading it. I mean, everybody has seen the calf raise machine at the gym. Very few people have ever visited the calf raise machine at the gym. How do I know? Because I went to the gym for a long time and it was always open. Uh, and when I was young, I played a lot of basketball. So I wanted really strong calves. So I would do like calf sets. Well, my buddy that was a world champion, this is so funny. So I have a buddy of mine, Larry, who was I think in 98, he was the 189 pound, sorry, 189 pound world champ. I'm sorry, 181 pounds, sorry, 181 pound world champ. Larry squatted 572 and a half pounds. Tied the world record, could have set the world record if they knew how to do kilo math, and nobody knew, we didn't know how to do kilo math at the time, and they were in Canada. Larry gets back from Worlds, and he's like, Sean, what do you do for your calves? Because your calves are pretty big. And he worked at the front desk at the gym that we used to go to. He's like, what do you do for your calves? Because they're pretty big. And I, the guys at the desk would always tease me about my calves. So the world champ would sit in with me to do calf sessions, which was craziness to me, right? I'm like, Larry, who gives a shit? You're a world champion. Why do you care? So loading your calves and making your calves stronger, particularly with external load. And I want us to get this idea of external load. The reason we're using external load is to create the necessary adaptations to thicken the tendons and ligaments and musculature so that your body becomes more resilient. And that, by the way, when you start to do that, magically enough, things tone up, firm up, and get cuter too, by the way, right? I've never seen anybody that stands on the Bosu ball and go, man, they've got great calves, right? However, people who actually do externally loaded calf work, their calves get better magically, right? Never seen anybody with 5-pound dumbbells that has good looking arms, ever. When they start to load it heavier, magically enough, their arms respond and they get arms that they're like, oh man, look, woo, right? So it's all the same, by the way. Your neck won't get stronger doing this outside of the skill of doing that. You have to go through a progression and get external load in there. That's how your neck gets thicker and stronger, right? We could talk about your fingers, the whole nine. It doesn't change. I don't care what body part you're talking about, right? So, yeah. So there is my very over opinionated version and discussion on the foot and the ankle, trying to keep it as simple as I possibly can to make it user friendly for people, right? So thoughts on that? Any of that conversation, Sonia?
I had a question. How much was that kettlebell? How much weight was that?
20 pounds.
That was 5 pounds. Okay.
No, 20 pounds.
Oh, it's 20 pounds. Okay. Okay. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
'Cause I've got
And
6 kilos that I think would work.
yeah, so you got a 12-pound belt for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when I first started doing tip raises, I was on the wall, right? And
Yeah, I'm
you know,
maxed out hip raises now. So
yeah, I mean, yeah,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I have went back and forth between like, I've done tip raises with well, I don't, especially barefoot, I don't particularly like this handle
Okay.
because it's a little weird. But it works, by the way.
Okay.
With shoes on, it's a little better as well.
Okay.
Like it works better because like for whatever my foot just didn't fit in there well.
Right.
So it gets a little wonky. But if I put shoes on, it's better. Competition bells that have that handle there, your foot fits in there pretty well.
Okay.
And then tip bars themselves aren't super expensive, and then you can load. Now, the one thing that you won't be able to do with it is you won't be able to do it unilaterally or one leg at a time.
Okay.
So, so yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to think about. And I think that you should do both, by the way, right?
Oh.
I think that you should do, unilateral work or work with one foot and then do it with both feet as well. Because just like with bicep curls or, just like with leg extensions or anything else, there's a benefit to moving both of the things at the same time. And then there's a benefit, just like with calf raises, right? You can always move more weight with two than you can with one,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And for muscular adaptation, more load at certain times is beneficial because it forces your body to adapt more. But also it's beneficial to do those, strengthening exercises, with one limb as well, right?
Right. Yep. Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. There's always a big difference between the two sides. So
Yeah. Well,
not
and
big.
and then that's a really important thing too. You want to catch up to that symmetry. One of the things that actually my bodybuilding did for me, well, not because I never did any bodybuilding, but I read the magazines and the importance on symmetry was really important. So when I take measurements, I'm always trying to get uh, my 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 measurements symmetrical. And then trying to create some sort of symmetry in my body as well, like trying to proportionately, and those proportions are whatever they are, but trying to proportionally like say, oh yeah, like I don't want too big of biceps, we'll say, and not big enough forearms, right? Like I want them to have like a bit of a symmetry. I'll just use that dumb word again, but because then you're you're loading each body part appropriately, so you get growth that is, you know, allows you to handle more things.
Right. Yeah.
So, and for certain things, it's harder than others. Like, and I may have said this before. Like today in my programming today, I had two pushing exercises and one, two, three pulling exercises. Yeah. So like I oftentimes will operate at like that's not quite 2-to-1 ratio, but oftentimes a 2-to-1 ratio because we use so much more of the front part of our body, especially with our upper body, and that creates a fairly significant discrepancy in our strength, but also in our posture as well. And when our posture breaks down, then what will also happen is then you start to get a lot of the repetitive use injuries. And then later on in our life, we start to get more joint issues because the bones are starting to kind of grind together because they've done that for long periods of time.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so you you
What?
you, you want to like, and I think at my tib raises today, I did 3 sets of 12, and in my calf raises, because I do them in a superset back to back, I did 3 sets of 10
Okay.
because the tibs don't get as much anything as the calves do, right? So not only is my repetitions higher, my repetitions are higher there. So and in like that 2-to-1 ratio that I was talking about, like so I had three pulling movements and two pushing movements. One of them was push-ups, and that was to kind of like close to failure. But I'm also pulling because I was a one-arm row after that, and I can one-arm rows aren't hard to get strong at. So I'm doing sets of 8 there. With one-arm rows. So there's an attempt to balance it out because you can add heavier weight than my body weight, to the row. So So yeah, you want to think about like creating balance back and forth between those things because it's easy for us to like get into a specific type of movement that we like and feels good, but not really balance it out, and then later on down the road wind up paying for it.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, yeah,
So what about like with me on that right foot, that I had the surgery on and stuff? It's like, so I don't have any mobility in that big toe, first toe, or second toe. Sorry. I mean, it's like there there's no, it's like there's
yeah.
nothing. I mean, like it's really hard to do calf raises. Oh, a single leg calf raise on that foot is like,
Yeah. So, you know, could you possibly do some isometrics, right? And start to build up holding at the top with either one or both legs to
okay,
increase the overall, endurance and strength. And isometrics, they're finding, um, are really good for tendon and ligament adaptation, right?
okay,
And
all
you
right,
and you want to hold them for long periods of time. And also isometrics obviously are good for mobility as well,
okay,
because you're in that very long range position, um, in
okay,
particularly with calf work, right?
right,
So yeah, I mean, but also like the struggle becomes like if it's painful, how do you modify around it? Um, you could try like uh and these aren't as good as some of the other calf movements, but something is always better than nothing. So you could try with the seed, um where you
yeah.
get
I was just going to ask you about that because I have
yeah,
done those. Yeah,
yeah, they're they're there's well, you go to a gym, so there should be a seated calf
yeah,
machine at the
yeah,
gym,
yeah.
and hit that bad boy, because man does that light your soleus up a bunch, right? And really trying to focus on as well that inversion and eversion of the ankle, right? Or that, I'm sorry, the calcaneus of the heel. So trying to get that heel to be able to move, as you're coming up.
Okay,
Um, yeah, I mean, it becomes a little tough with the toes because it's hard to build strength, in the toes if you can't load the rest of the body. Because again, it's
right.
just, and I know people have all the devices and all the things, right? But
Yeah,
in my less than humble opinion, when I look at the people who have all the devices and then do all the devices, I look at that and then I go, yeah, you still don't seem very athletic to me. So, I mean, like, you know, so, and then like also, there might be some benefit to, like getting on surfaces that are a little mobile, right? So like, you have like the Foot Collective has those little half rounds.
yep,
And you'll see people on PVC things as well.
okay,
There's definitely some benefit to that because you're getting a lot of eccentric movement, especially like on the PVC thing, right? So you're getting a lot of stretching out of the foot. Um, and I've seen some people, that I think are pretty good athletes. There was a trainer, in the '80s. His name was Marv Marinovich, and his son was named Todd Marinovich, and he was a quarterback at USC and wound up getting drafted by the Raiders. Now Marv was a crazy person, and Marv was a crazy football dad, and Marv built Todd Marinovich into, coming out of college, the best college quarterback ever. But as we so often see, there's a price to that. And so Todd never actually saw his full potential realized because, like, he got out into the real world, started to make some money, and went the way that a lot of '80s athletes did, right? But there's a lot of, they had a lot of stuff that they would do. And I don't, Marv died and I don't remember when he died, but there's some people that kind of hang on to his principles and training philosophy. And I know they did a lot of stuff on like PVC pipes and like ski poles and moving back and forward and backwards on them just to gain the mobility and the strength
Okay.
into the foot.
Okay.
So you could you could go down that rabbit hole a little bit, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, like I'm starting to get a little bit of I fear the
Arthritis.
first piece. Yeah.
Ah, yeah, the
Yeah.
big, yeah,
Yeah. Right here. Right.
yeah.
And it's just from the years of jujitsu, you know,
Mm,
like so. Yeah. And I suppose I could monkey around with some, you know, movements to see if I could strengthen it more. But I just haven't kind of went down that far down the rabbit hole. But yeah,
yeah,
so yep,
yep. I was in my 50s, I think, when I started with the arthritis in the big toe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not in the joint; it's just on the end of it, and
Okay.
it's just from like, you know, pressure, you know.
Okay. Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah. So, any other thoughts, questions, ideas, Sonia?
No, no,
No.
this is good information. I'm gonna do those kettlebell tib raises.
And remember, when you see someone that likes kettlebells, tell them that's the best use of the kettlebell ever.
Right.
They will. I'm sure they will take you out to dinner and buy your dessert too,
Yeah.
and maybe a cup of coffee too.
Right.
So, yeah. One of my good friends back home is one of the best kettlebell sport coaches in the country, and that's what I tell them that the kettlebell should be used for. I'm
Hmm.
like, dude, you guys are doing the kettlebell wrong. It should be you should just use it to strengthen your ankles.
Yep.
Forget the rest of it,
Yeah, I know. I'm down with that.
right?
Right.
So, alrighty. Next week I think we're going to talk about the kind of spine and low back again, and talk
Okay.
a little bit more about flexion, extension, lateral flexion, all that stuff.
Good.
All right.
Yep. It's all
Cool.
good.
Cool. All
All
right.
right.
Well, have a great week. We'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.